For years, our politicians have allowed other countries to steal our jobs, punish our workers, and target American industry and American agriculture.
It began without sirens or headlines, just quiet envelopes delivered to 350 workers on a cold morning in Burlington, Iowa. No press conference, no warning. A factory that fed families for generations was erased with a single spreadsheet. This wasn't just another layoff, it was the first domino. The town's core, its schools, its roads, its future, was ripped out, and the impact didn't stop at Iowa's border. What happens when global corporations chase efficiency at the cost of stability? Why did that decision in a boardroom lead to farmers hacking their own tractors? And what made international governments suddenly scramble to build their own machines? Stick with us, because this isn't just about tractors or tariffs. It's about food, trust, and the future of rural life. If you think this story won't reach your doorstep, you're not ready for what's coming next. The dealer dilemma. Eleanor Ketchum's farm equipment dealership once buzzed with activity. Now it stood quiet. Her family had sold CNH machinery for 47 years under rigid franchise agreements. Those same contracts now boxed her in, preventing her from selling alternative brands or liquidating unsold inventory, even as CNH ceased support. "We were loyal," she muttered, flipping through legal documents that offered no escape clause. "They left us with nothing." Calls from angry farmers started flooding in. Marcus Johnson had spent $645,000 on new planting rigs and now could not get parts. Sarah Martinez's harvester was down, waiting for a hydraulic valve once shipped overnight, now indefinitely back-ordered. Another farmer estimated losses of $7,500 per day as he waited for a single sensor module. These were not inconveniences. These were make-or-break delays during critical planting and harvesting windows. Dealers like Eleanor were not just salespeople. They were lifelines, providing 24-hour repair service, warehousing parts for emergencies, and ensuring local uptime in an industry ruled by timing. Now they were powerless. Her techs had no access to proprietary tools. Her shelves carried equipment no longer supported by the manufacturer. John Deere seized the moment. Timothy Wright, a regional sales executive, held recruitment calls with every stranded CNH dealer. Flexible terms, financial assistance, inventory swaps. It was open season. Within days, green paint replaced red across rural America. Robert Thompson even held a public rebranding ceremony, tearing down Case 1H signage as his staff applauded. "I backed them for 34 years, he told reporters. "They left us hanging. We're done." Kubota moved next, offering full repair access under its Open Source Orange initiative, breaking with industry norms and targeting farmers who now viewed CNH's restrictions as betrayal. Across the Midwest, the brand shift became a rebellion. And in that shift, the foundation of American agricultural equipment support began to crack. The supply chain catastrophe. Precision Hydraulics in Muncie, Indiana, had been quiet for days. Inside, 84 employees gathered in the break room, where Chief Executive Officer Michael Chen gave them the news. 70% of our orders disappeared overnight, he said softly. CNH had canceled without notice. Precision had manufactured parts to CNH's exact specifications for 38 years. Now their machines sat idle. This was not just one factory's failure. It was the collapse of a fragile ecosystem. Agricultural equipment relied on tight supply networks of machine shops, electronics firms, sensor specialists, training centers, and logistics companies, all aligned to serve major manufacturers like CNH, and most were located within a 500-mile radius of the final assembly plants. That proximity ensured fast response times, minimized freight costs, and kept supply chains lean. One job lost in manufacturing meant 4.6 more jobs lost elsewhere: truck drivers, welders, machine calibrators, cleaning crews, cafeteria workers. Within weeks, real estate values dropped as businesses shut their doors. City budgets shrank. Schools braced for enrollment drops. Welfare demand surged. Meanwhile, CNH's move to Brazil met resistance. Gabriela Santos, their human resources director abroad, warned investors that American know-how was not easily replaced. "You can't fast-track decades of knowledge," she said. "Everything, skills, logistics, quality control, is now at risk." Transitioning operations proved far messier than anticipated. Sensing opportunity, John Deere and Kubota stepped in to stabilize domestic suppliers. John Deere signed deals to keep production local. Kubota extended financial lifelines to toolmakers and component shops, asking only for exclusivity. At the same time, foreign players made bold moves. YTO Group broke ground on a Kansas facility, pledging to build American tractors with American labor for American soil. They were not filling a gap. They were replacing CNH. "We tracked this shutdown across towns, suppliers, and foreign factories, so you didn't have to. Now you've got the full picture behind the collapse that reshaped rural America." If that saved you time or opened your eyes, hit subscribe and help us keep reporting what others won't. The competitor counterattack. While CNH unraveled, its rivals coordinated an offensive. Catherine Chen, marketing director at John Deere, presented market share collapse charts with quiet confidence. "This isn't damage control," she told executives. "This is replacement. Permanent strategic replacement." John Deere launched the American-Made, American-Stayed initiative. Free diagnostic tools, transparent parts pricing, and service documents unlocked for all customers. No permissions, no subscriptions, just access. They were not just stealing market share. They were rewriting the rules. In agriculture, brand loyalty is generational. Farmers do not switch on a whim, but CNH's betrayal opened wounds competitors eagerly healed with empathy, access, and incentives. CNH's loss became Deere's gain, fast. Kubota carved its own path, embracing small-scale farmers. Through its open-source Orange program, it dismantled barriers to ownership, complete repair access, DIY documentation, and open parts systems. Farmers welcomed it as liberation. "Ownership should mean control," declared Kubota's James Yamamoto. "You paid for it, you should be allowed to fix it." YTO Group's Kansas entry turned heads. Staffed by former CNH workers and stocked by former CNH suppliers, it became a symbol of rapid, ethical re-entry into the American market. Equipment was tailored to American crops, American fields, and American expectations. It sent a clear message. We are not a foreign replacement. We are the future CNH abandoned. Within half a year, CNH's market share dropped from 27% to 11%. John Deere soared. Kubota gained trust. Mahindra and YTO advanced quickly. Wall Street turned on CNH. Stock values nosedived. Restructuring efforts failed to restore confidence. Global outsourcing, once considered efficiency, now read as betrayal. Farmers changed too. They demanded transparency. They expected partnership. They refused corporate arrogance. They rewarded authenticity. That shift is still underway, reshaping the future of agricultural machinery across the entire country. The presidential battleground. When economic collapse reaches the Farm Belt, it does not just break communities, it reshapes presidencies. In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, President Donald Trump took the stage flanked by idle tractors and disillusioned workers. "You do not abandon the American farmer," he declared to a crowd of 3,000. "Not on my watch." The rally was no campaign stop. It was a line in the sand. The CNH industrial shutdown had become the centerpiece of a broader political battle over economic loyalty. Within 2 days, sweeping executive orders hit the wires. 25% tariffs were placed on Canadian and Mexican imports, alongside 10% duties on Chinese goods. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent raised concerns about escalating instability, but Trump was unmoved. The goal was simple: punish offshoring and reward American manufacturing. Across Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri, farmers tuned in from barns and grain elevators, realizing that their fields had become ground zero in a global trade war. Market reactions were brutal. CNH industrial stock dropped 12% within hours. Futures for corn, soybeans, and beef swung wildly as global buyers adjusted to American unpredictability. Governor Kim Reynolds declared a state emergency, redirecting funds to counties hardest hit by equipment shortages and evaporating export deals. The political divide briefly vanished. Democratic Senator Maria Rodriguez stood beside Republican colleagues in an extraordinary joint press conference. "This is not a partisan issue," she said. "It is a survival issue." The collapse of one manufacturer had unified an unlikely coalition: farmers, dealers, mayors, and lawmakers, all demanding protection. Yet while America reacted, the world began retaliating. The international backlash. The international response was as fast as it was coordinated. Within 72 hours, China responded not with words, but bureaucracy. Licenses were delayed. Shipments were stalled. American beef, soybeans, poultry, and corn were denied entry under the guise of new safety checks and customs delays. 125% retaliatory tariffs made certain that American agricultural goods would not compete. Worse still, Chinese buyers turned to Brazil and Argentina. Long-standing partnerships with American farmers dissolved overnight, not in protest, but in pragmatism. Meanwhile, Chinese officials cut rare earth exports to American firms, tightening pressure on both agriculture and technology simultaneously. In Brussels, furious farmers rallied in front of European Union buildings. Led by French organizer Pierre Dubois, their message was clear: if it can happen to them, it can happen to us. European agricultural unions demanded protections from American trade spillovers while expressing solidarity with abandoned U.S. farmers. The image of tractors rolling through cobblestone streets became a viral moment that echoed around the globe. Brazil acted swiftly. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva unveiled major infrastructure expansions to support rapid agricultural growth. Satellite images revealed a 43% increase in rainforest clearing around new processing zones. American manufacturing offshoring had directly accelerated Amazon deforestation. Brazilian scientists sounded the alarm, warning that low-cost outsourcing had now become a global environmental liability. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney introduced joint manufacturing programs to preserve North American food equipment production. "Food security transcends flags," he said. "We cannot allow corporate decisions to undo decades of integration." As shipping rates climbed, trade flows slowed. Agricultural ports in California, Texas, and Oregon reported vessel traffic drops as high as 44%. For exporters like hay and straw producers, transportation costs made international sales untenable. International customers walked away. As markets fragmented, developing nations faced famine threats. The United Nations called emergency meetings to address tractor shortages across Africa and Southeast Asia. Global agriculture was splintering, and the shockwave had just begun. The farmers' rebellion. James Harmon's combine failed on day 3 of harvest. A $420 sensor should have arrived overnight. Instead, he received an automated message citing indefinite delays. Each missed day cost thousands. Within 5 days, Harmon had lost over $30,000. "This machine runs perfectly," he said, kicking the tire. "But without that one sensor, it's just a monument to corporate betrayal." Farmers across the Midwest echoed the same story: locked software, unavailable parts, and dead-end customer service lines had paralyzed their operations. The machines they owned were held hostage by the companies that sold them. Then came Sarah Jenkins, a soybean farmer and former engineer. She live-streamed a step-by-step guide to bypassing firmware on her Case YH tractor. "If they won't help us," she said, "we'll help each other." Her video was viewed over 27 million times. The spark had caught. Soon, Facebook groups, forums, and Telegram channels lit up with repair blueprints and diagnostic code breakdowns. Church basements turned into hacking labs. Farmers used parts from junkyards. reprogrammed software, and rewired systems. In Tennessee, one farmer converted a potato harvester using electronics from 3 separate manufacturers. Innovation became necessity. Reverse-engineered parts began arriving from China, delivered without guarantees but embraced by desperate hands. Wang Components advertised on social media with one message: no delays, no locks, just farming. Universities responded. Iowa State created new certification programs in agricultural electronics and software diagnostics. Professor James Wilson declared, "This knowledge should have never been locked away in the first place." Unexpectedly, political allies emerged. Republican Representative Thomas Chen of Minnesota introduced the nation's first right-to-repair bill. "This is not about left or right," he said. "This is about independence." In a twist few saw coming, the rebellion was not just fixing broken tractors. It was rewriting the future of agricultural ownership. The legislative response. Farmers took their rebellion to the State House and won. By summer, 23 states had introduced right-to-repair bills. Minnesota passed the first, led by Representative Thomas Chen. His bill forced manufacturers to provide tools, manuals, and parts without voiding warranties. "You bought it," he said. "You should be able to fix it." Corporations pushed back hard. John Deere spent $12 million lobbying states. CNH Industrial added $8 million. They cited intellectual property and safety. But lawmakers saw only fear and control. Iowa's vote wasn't close. The bill passed overwhelmingly. Governor Kim Reynolds signed it at the state fair, surrounded by farmers holding modified tractors. "We're not asking permission," she declared. "We're reclaiming our rights." Washington took notice. The Federal Trade Commission launched antitrust probes. Emily Rodriguez warned Congress, restricting repairs is market abuse. Internal documents showed manufacturers suppressing competition to protect profits. The Department of Justice followed with investigations. Universities received funding to teach repair skills. Farmers filled classrooms. The movement went global. Europe launched its own inquiries. Canada proposed repair harmonization. Even Silicon Valley joined in. Tech firms, fighting their own repair wars, now stood beside farmers. Manufacturers braced for impact. Stock values slipped. Revenue forecasts shrank. CNH Industrial sued, claiming state laws violated federal jurisdiction. But the tide had turned. Farmers weren't just fighting for equipment. They were fighting for freedom. And the courts, the country, and the world were watching. What the courts would decide remained uncertain. But in town halls, tool sheds, and state houses, one truth had already been established. Farmers were done waiting for permission. The Silicon Valley invasion. When legacy manufacturers collapsed, Silicon Valley moved in fast. In Livermore, California, Monarch Tractor unveiled a driverless electric tractor that planted, analyzed soil, avoided obstacles, and collected data, all autonomously. The live stream captured global attention, and within weeks, Monarch secured $387 million from investors usually focused on apps and semiconductors. Agriculture was no longer about horsepower. It was about information. Startups began flooding the space with sensors, cloud software, and retrofit kits for older machines. Sarah Martinez from Microsoft's Farm Cloud showed how $10 sensors could upgrade existing tractors into precision machines, optimizing fertilizer use, irrigation, and yield without replacing equipment. Farmers quickly adapted. Richard Thompson from Missouri once hated computers. Now he used a tablet to manage fields. "This isn't replacing experience," he said. "It's sharpening it." Machines became platforms. Combines turned into real-time analytics hubs. Tractors became data collectors on wheels. Tech firms redefined ownership models. Instead of buying new hardware, farmers paid for software upgrades. Some feared replacing one form of dependence with another. Others saw freedom in tools that improved existing equipment. Agriculture was changing, not through louder engines, but smarter decisions. And this shift was just beginning, the data revolution. Modern farms began running on data more than diesel. Emma Rodriguez used drones, weather models, and soil sensors to manage crop rotations, irrigation, and grazing across diversified fields. Her family had moved beyond monoculture corn to resilience-focused operations. Less equipment, more information, she said. It keeps us adaptable. Old-school farmers like Richard Thompson joined her, offering field instincts that paired perfectly with real-time analytics. Their collaboration showed that traditional knowledge and tech could coexist. "My eyes catch what the sensor misses," he said, "and the data confirms what I feel in the soil." Farmers stopped chasing maximum yield and started prioritizing sustainability and risk management. Equipment-sharing cooperatives like the Prairie Alliance let hundreds of farms cut machinery costs by 70%. Sarah Chen, the coordinator, explained, "We replaced duplication with collaboration." Data pooling followed. Farms shared performance metrics to refine planting schedules, crop selection, and equipment use. Universities updated curricula to teach agricultural analytics alongside soil science. Farming became a data-driven profession, equal parts engineer, ecologist, and economist. Small family farms now access tools once reserved for large corporations. Software-managed scheduling, weather risk, and market shifts in real time. In this new era, success favored not the biggest, but the most informed, the cooperative manufacturing movement. When CNH Industrial walked away, farmers built their own future. In Iowa, John Martinez gathered 78 farmers inside a former CNH warehouse to unveil the Prairie Workhorse, a durable, repairable tractor they built themselves. With modular parts and open repair access, it rejected everything corporate equipment had become. Backed by $2.3 million in pooled funds, the cooperative hired laid-off machinists and partnered with local universities. Agricultural engineer Dr. Emma Thompson praised the shift. "These machines are built for people who use them, not for investors." Orders quickly overwhelmed capacity. Farmers wanted machines that worked and could be fixed in their barns. Richard Chen, a longtime dealer, said, "They don't want service plans. They want reliability." Cooperatives slashed costs by eliminating marketing budgets, dealer markups, and planned obsolescence. Farmers contributed practical feedback. Engineers responded. Design cycles shortened. Quality improved. Ownership meant involvement at every step. The model drew national attention. Economists studied it. Lawmakers supported it. Venture capitalists saw a new type of disruption, one driven by community, not control. What began as a workaround became a revolution in how farm tools were built, owned, and repaired. The innovation centers. What corporations abandoned, communities repurposed. In Burlington, Mayor Thomas Wilson transformed the shuttered CNH plant into the Heartland Innovation Center. Instead of chasing one big employer, the city nurtured many smaller ones, each focused on farming, tech, or renewable energy. Engineers launched retrofitting startups. Students trained alongside welders. Former suppliers retooled for new markets. Richard Dominguez, a CNH veteran, began building planter upgrades that extended older equipment's life by decades. "This isn't reinvention, it's evolution," he said. Technical colleges inside the center offered rapid retraining. Professor Maria Chen bridged old skills to new industries. Local churches provided support networks for families in transition. Mutual aid and mentorship replaced corporate oversight. The results? Business creation rose 28%. Tax revenues began stabilizing. CNH's exit had caused pain, but it had also cleared the way for community-owned revival. Other towns took notice. The Innovation Center model spread. Manufacturing didn't vanish, it decentralized. Power shifted from boardrooms to barns. Rural America wasn't waiting for help anymore. It was building its own future, one innovation hub at a time. The environmental paradox. When CNH Industrial offshored production, it triggered a wave of environmental fallout. In Brazil, satellite data revealed a 43% rise in rainforest clearing around new manufacturing zones. João Silva, a Brazilian environmental scientist, warned the United Nations, "We're exchanging American jobs for Amazon destruction." Water shortages, air pollution, and unchecked emissions followed as environmental safeguards collapsed under pressure from industrial expansion. Manufacturing abroad also strained local resources. Factories competed with farms for water. Nearby communities faced respiratory illness. Regulations once upheld in the United States were bypassed in countries desperate for jobs. The emissions saved by closing U.S. plants were erased by global logistics and fossil-fueled production abroad. Meanwhile, equipment shortages hit developing countries hardest. Farmers in Africa, Asia, and Latin America relied on imported machinery from U.S. suppliers now gone. Repairs became impossible. Food production declined. Mechanization, once central to climate resilience, faltered when tools became scarce. In response, the European Union began carbon audits tracing manufacturing footprints. Chinese officials launched their own domestic agricultural equipment programs, citing environmental risk and strategic dependency. Minister Li Wei stated clearly, "We cannot modernize agriculture at the expense of our planet." The world realized the hidden cost of corporate savings. Equipment built cheaply overseas came with carbon, chaos, and collapse. The manufacturing exodus wasn't just a labor issue. It was an environmental crisis reshaping how nations viewed supply chains, emissions, and agricultural sovereignty. The damage was done. And now the global food system was next. The food security crisis. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization convened an emergency summit as equipment shortages began to strangle food production in vulnerable nations. Delegates from 57 countries listened as Minister Li Wei announced China's $70 billion agricultural self-sufficiency initiative. Food security cannot depend on foreign corporations, he warned. The room was silent and then erupted in support. China's move inspired a chain reaction. India launched domestic machinery programs for small farms. Brazil expanded local production. Europe funded right-to-repair laws and equipment manufacturing grants. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney worked with the Trump administration to create cross-border manufacturing protections for the entire North American food system. Commodity prices surged. Wheat, corn, and soybeans reached levels unseen since 2008. Global hunger programs faced disruption as equipment-dependent yield improvements failed to materialize. Small farmers bore the brunt, trapped with aging machinery and no parts. International seed firms faltered too. Their most productive crop varieties required precise machinery. Without it, gains in nutrition and yield could not be realized. Agricultural technology advances meant nothing if farmers lacked the tools to use them. In response, research centers began designing open-source machinery. Built from common materials and shared freely, these designs bypassed corporate control and gave developing nations the ability to build what they needed. Still, humanitarian organizations couldn't meet the growing demand. The world learned a painful truth. Food security was no longer just about weather or war. It was about wrenches, wheels, and welders. When the tools disappear, the harvest follows. The corporate reckoning. At CNH Industrial's shareholder meeting, frustration boiled over. Once dominant in the American heartland, the company's agricultural market share had fallen from 27% to 8.3% in just 5 years. Their cost-saving gamble had failed. Stock value had dropped 38%. Lawsuits and resignations followed. Internal documents revealed the miscalculation. Quality issues in Brazilian plants, missed delivery targets, skyrocketing warranty claims, and customers who never came back. We saved $400 million and lost $1.7 billion in brand value, said analyst Maria Thompson. It's the worst trade in corporate history. Farmers were not forgiving. Over 90% said they still factored CNH's betrayal into purchasing decisions. Dealer John Martinez, once a loyal Case 1H partner, rejected every offer to return. Trust doesn't get rebuilt with coupons, he said. Attempts to repair the damage with nostalgic marketing campaigns failed. Professor Emma Chen's Harvard case study, How to Destroy a Century of Brand Equity, became required reading for business students. Her conclusion was stark. Short-term thinking isn't just bad strategy. It's corporate suicide in essential industries. Activist investors forced leadership changes, but it was too late. CNH's customer base had defected. John Deere, Kubota, and YTO filled the void, not just with machines, but with long-term relationships grounded in reliability. CNH's decline became more than a company's collapse. It was a lesson. In critical industries like food, trust is the most valuable asset. Once lost, it doesn't return. The new agricultural landscape. 5 years later, the farms looked different, and so did the farmers. Emma Rodriguez now managed her family's diversified operation using a tablet. She grew multiple crops, monitored weather models, and applied fertilizer with precision down to the square meter. It's not about maximum yield anymore, she said. It's about adaptability. Equipment was no longer owned individually. Through the Prairie Alliance, over 300 farmers shared machines, cut costs, and boosted uptime. Repairs happened locally. Students from Iowa State helped diagnose software glitches. Old welders mentored young coders. The community grew stronger than any dealership. Farmer-led manufacturing cooperatives had replaced traditional suppliers. Their machines lasted longer, cost less, and could be fixed without corporate permission. Venture capital began flowing into these cooperatives. European and Asian officials toured their facilities. Innovation no longer required a logo. What if farming wasn't just about growing food, but solving climate problems with tech, soil, and strategy? Why are more students enrolling in agricultural schools than ever before? Chasing a career that's suddenly about resilience, innovation, and impact. Could carbon credits and smart water systems turn small farms into sustainable powerhouses? Are we witnessing the end of chemical-heavy agriculture and the rise of precision, low-impact growing? And what does it mean when farmers don't just use the tools? They build them, control the data, and shape their future without corporate oversight. Surprised? Tell us what hit hardest in the comments. Subscribe for more stories that go beyond the surface. Thanks for watching. This is about who controls your food future.